Good morning, everybody, or actually, hello, everybody. I know it's not morning everywhere. My name is William Roberson. I am a contributor at Forbes.com, where I write about electric bicycles, e-bikes, as are more commonly known. And the topic of this web session, I guess, is turning e-bike industry challenges into opportunities. And it's been an interesting and fun road for e-bikes. I got my first e-bike, boy, it's been almost 8 years ago now, and I still have it, and I kind of use it as a baseline for seeing how e-bikes have developed over time. As you all know, the popularity of e-bikes has become phenomenal in a very, very short time, boosted, I think, partly by the isolation issue during the pandemic. People just kind of rediscovered getting out on bicycles, and suddenly there was this sort of how can I say, perfect timing between battery technologies, the miniaturization of motor technologies, the cost of materials going into making a decent e-bike going down, which allowed really an explosion of interest in e-bikes, and kind of like electric cars, when people got a chance to ride an e-bike, they really typically enjoyed it. And part of the reason was it allowed them to go farther on an e-bike than they typically did. It didn't require as much effort, so it was a very good commuting tool. And also, they were just a lot of fun, lots and lots of fun. And I know if you're listening now, you may have an e-bike or be interested in an e-bike, and we have some of the most influential people here in the e-bike industry. And we're just going to go around the horn, let them introduce themselves very quickly, and then we're going to get into some topics that are facing the e-bike industry at this time. And we'll just get started. I'm going to go around start with Quinton, because he's kind of in the top left of my box here. Quinton, go ahead and give us a synopsis of your involvement in the industry. And folks, if you're out there listening, please mute your microphones, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Well, hi everybody. I am Vice President of Europe for a company called Honbike. We are a manufacturer and producer and designer of an e-bike which is slightly unique and different. We've gone for a very kind of down the different stylized route, I suppose, maybe focusing on a non-cyclist perhaps. And I've been in the bike industry for about 20 years or so, coming from working in the niche, so from folding bikes and eventually evolving all the way through to where we are now with e-bikes, where we are today. And I'm based in London.
Thank you, Quinton. Francois?
Yes, hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Francois, founder of FUELL, a US-based company that does urban mobility, meaning e-bikes and e-motorcycle. You can check out our website, fuel.com, to see the different range we have. This company was created 5 years ago with Eric Buell of Buell Motorcycle fame. So we have a definite angle towards long range, fun to ride, very efficient type of mobility. And really, the motto of the company is to offer products that are durable, reliable, and are true car replacement, because this is, we think, the sense of the future.
Thank you, Francois. Yves?
Yeah, so I'm Yves, Yvaral in French. I'm in Canada since more than 5 years, taking care of the COMMENCAL bicycle branch. I'm in the bicycle industry since more than 25 years, working as a sales manager for a French distributor for Santa Cruz bicycle, was a business development advisor for 3D design. So mainly in the sports and competition bicycle side. And of course we have in our COMMENCAL bicycle side e-bikes, but yeah, it's more mountain bikes, bicycle e-bikes than commuter bikes. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Jordan?
Welcome.
Hey everyone, my name is Jordan Recchia. Been in the industry, just specifically bicycles, since 2013, so about 10 years at this point. Worked for some big brands, GT and Cannondale, led design for GT, basically every bike on their website right now. I had my hand in, as well as many Cannondale e-bikes. And now I'm actually at Trek and focusing specifically on city products. That's urban mobility focused product. Things for commuting, vacation, bicycles that give you fitness, and many e-related products. And we're, thinking maybe class 3, who knows? But at the end of the day, we're developing bikes that get people moving, cars, bring them life and vitality. And that's what we want to see in a premium product, because that's what Trek is. Trek's a premium product. It's a bit more of a Mercedes of a bicycle. We're most cutting edge in tech, and that's what I do currently.
Thank you, Jordan. And Narek, you're joining us from prelaunch.com. You're not specifically with any particular e-bike maker, but Prelaunch is involved with e-bikes. Can you give us a little more background?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Narek, co-founder and CEO of prelaunch.com. We are a platform, we call it a product validation platform, where we help manufacturers, companies to validate their early stage concepts and understand their product potential at a early stage and understand their customers in a deeper way. And is one of our categories, where we try to, at a concept stage, at a early stage, give value to the creators so they understand their customers better. Model where on pre-launch, consumers are putting down, and this way they give valuable signals that they really want to buy those products. So then what pre-launch does, takes the data, compares it with its own benchmarks, analyzes it, and then provides this holistic approach. So you get really interesting data, and you get a data that you can trust. So this is basically what we do.
Thank you, Narek. All right, well, let's just get right into it, guys. Like I said, e-bikes have become incredibly popular. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and we have a high concentration of cyclists here and a high concentration of bike shops. And I was at my bike shop recently, and I always begin with, because I see more and more e-bikes on the floor, aside what we call analog bikes or non-e-bikes. And I asked the shop owner, I said, what is the ratio of analog bikes to e-bikes that are being sold now? And she, about 6 months ago, which would have been, in the springtime, she said about 50-50. So at that bike shop, it's as far as how e-bikes are made, how they perform, and so forth like that. And so the market has matured quite a bit since the kind of the Wild West early days. And so first question really for all of you is, what are the main challenges that you're seeing now for e-bike producers? What is the thing that is becoming difficult to work with, or a problem that you need to solve? And why don't we just start with Quinton, and it's just kind of an open conversation. Anybody can chime in, and we'll just spend a few minutes on that before we move on.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges at the moment is obviously quite obvious to everyone, is the high levels of inventory we have in the industry. But I think the knock-on effect that it has for manufacturers or companies like ourselves, in the sense that we're and the knock-on effect of all this inventory reduces our OEM business as well, and makes it have a challenge on that front. So we're challenged on both sides, and I think it's just no one has the crystal ball as to when this will be corrected or fixed. But you've got the geopolitical situation going on, the war, inflation. There's a lot of negative news, but actually, if you look towards the future, there's a lot of green lights, in the sense that, especially in Europe, and I think in the US now, you also got a few funds coming through to, encourage people to cycle. But in Europe, the European, Union and the Cycling Federation just, pushed through this whole new legislation to continue to expand. France continues with its, government subsidies, toning it down, but expanding it to second tier cities or third tier cities. And I think generally people, accepting a bike more, and especially like you say, was this isolation period where people rediscovering. But I think the big opportunity for the cycle industry is kind of the non-cyclist, in a sense of getting that person that's been so used to the car, get them out of the car to try it and ride it. And maybe you start off with 1 day a week, ride a bike. But a lot of those car drivers know how to ride a bicycle that just haven't done so in 20 years. So I think it's the challenge of getting those people into e-bikes. And, I think the challenge for many people is educating your general consumer about what e-bikes are, because everyone thinks about it's complicated, the battery's going to die, it's going to fire, all these new things. But it is actually just a lovely regular bike. But like you said, you have less effort, you have more fun, and you can go a lot further.
Coming
Yeah, I
from
think
the
that's
develop-
no, that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I was going to say, coming from the development side of that, you touched on the non-cyclist.
Yeah.
And a big challenge that I think many e-bike producers are facing, especially when it comes to the development of the bike, the nuts and bolts from the ground up, is the amount of integration and entertainment that's being expected to be in these bicycles now. When you think of a car, right, this interior experience, how do you bring that into a bike so that they can have that on their two-wheel experience? So for instance, if this is a non-cyclist, they're not going to expect a bike to ride, extremely efficiently and be stiff like a road bike. They want it to be comfortable. They want it to be something they can hop on and hop off, take the battery out, charge. They want all of their things that they would normally have in a vehicle integrated into that bike. And one of the main challenges right now is really, actually, when traditionally the bicycle industry is just developing a frame and we source parts from here and there, right? But now we're creating our own proprietary parts. That could be fenders, that could be lamps, that could be integrated handlebar cockpit systems. And so designing all those things now has to be integrated into the timeline and the roadmaps of these bikes, which ultimately expands these processes by 2, 3, 4 times. So really creating time for that R&D process up front, even before you kick off the project, is so important, because that's what's happening now. There's a really high demand for this amount of integration of these products to really, bring these bikes to make them attractive and catch the attention of that non-cyclist.
In a real traditional way, I suppose the bike industry has had to shift very, very quickly into this whole new world of integration and that consumer feel and ease of use and simplicity, when actually potentially the bike industry itself wasn't quite ready for it. They didn't have the right people or the skill set. And I think that feeds down to many, many things, eventually trickles down all the way through to the system, where that's where now you've got some specialist electric bike dealers who specialize in e-bikes where others don't. So there's this real paradigm of shift going on as well, not just the consumer, but internally within the industry, which is a challenge in itself as well.
I would chime in now and think that you guys are right. The e-bike industry is getting into a more mature phase now than it was, and Bill referred to the Wild Wild West of the first years. And for me, it was very surprising to see that the e-bike industry was dominated by greed and confusion. Greed, where you see all those companies that are being created yesterday that assemble a shit bike and just ship it by container to any dealer or any outlet, and just battle on price and cheap quality. And that's really the reflection of greed, because it's not a plan, it's just grabbing money. And that entailed a lot of confusion of, people saying, well, Francois, you got a beautiful bike for $6,000, but I saw another one for $2,000 at Costco. So why don't I buy the $2,000 at Costco? And there's not much I can say to that other than, try both and just pick the one that you like best. So there was this created a lot of confusion among OEMs, also amongst consumers. So what price should an e-bike be? $999 at Costco or $10,000 plus at Trek or Stromer? Which performance should it have? What's the duration? How long are these components gonna last me? And some of our consumer just send us pictures of, hey, I bought this 6 months ago and this unknown brand, and it's starting to rot and I said, well, it's not going to happen with ours, but it's not obvious at the beginning. So really greed and confusion was the dominant factor in this market over the last 3 years, and it was even pushed by the COVID pandemic, where everybody got completely nuts, from consumer to OEM to distributor to everyone. And now we're having this situation where there's a glut of products, there's a battle of war, there's people going bust, big names that have been funded hundreds of millions of dollars, it's just like going to the ground. This is insane. I mean, it's not even the Wild Wild West. It's beyond that. It's just people being unreasonable, pushed by greed, entertaining confusion, risking high inventory. I really hope that, through progress, so through bankruptcies, through customer education, through better design and better integration of the components in the bike and making it a different product and not just a bike on which you've just slapped an electric motor, this entire industry is going to grow and mature, because these past, I'd say, 3-4 years have not been fun, to be honest.
Yves,
No,
what challenges do you see at COMMENCAL? Yves, can you hear us? Yves is struggling with the microphone. Can you hear me, brother? Okay, I'm going to ask him to unmute and we'll see if he can hear us. Can you hear us, Yves? We cannot hear you. Okay. All right. Well, we will circle back and I'll keep an eye on his microphone there. Let's go on to looking forward now. Oh, there he goes. Can you hear us now? Yves, we just wanted to get your input on that question. What challenges have you seen?
I'm sorry, I don't hear anything, so I just try to fix that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just pop forward then. Next topic. Now that we've talked about a little bit about the past and some current challenges, let's talk about opportunities. And Jordan and I, Jordan kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, in that there are other things happening in the industry besides e-bikes, and also in the e-bike industry as well. So why don't we start there? Jordan, what do you see going forward? What are the opportunities?
Yeah, so I think one of the big themes going into the future is it's bigger than a bike, right? So bigger than what you understand as a bicycle, even aesthetically. It's no longer just a bicycle, it's a piece of transportation. And so how do you develop a bike that fulfills the transportation purposes, not necessarily a cycling experience? So typically, historically, in the bicycle industry, it was, especially when you entered the 90s and then into the early 2000s, it was very much about racing. And so the philosophy behind bikes is, I need to pedal, use my own human power, which is a beautiful thing. It will never go away. And it will only be strengthened with e-bikes. That's how that works. But going into the future, we really need to focus on bikes that really fulfill a purpose of commuting and getting people from point A to point B, and giving them the fulfillment, that life and vitality that they would want from going and getting on a bike on a Sunday or after work or riding to work. It's very fulfilling. And so when you think about that, think about like the integrations of certain technologies that make the experience more pleasant. Artificial intelligence, computer vision, things like that will help leverage and create more safety for the rider when they're on the road. And then you can add a whole nother level to that. If you're thinking 10 years out, now you bring in automation, right? So you've got automated vehicles and you've got subscription plans. So now think about, how do you develop your bikes to even be higher quality? So that way, maybe the customer doesn't have to buy their bike, but maybe they subscribe to it and it constantly is updated. So maybe there's in circulation 10,000 units that are really high quality. Maybe those 10,000 units are 15 grand, but someone subscribes to it for 200 a month. And then it constantly gets updated. And maybe at the end of that life cycle, that product can sustainably be sold to somebody and now they can have it. So concepts like this are a big part of our future.
Yeah, I think
so. This is, yeah.
I agree with that in the sense where a lot of that's kind of already happening. A lot of subscription models are coming out at the moment. You've also got the big car leasing companies now stepping in and creating these fleets where to go to companies, instead of getting your company car, you're getting a company bike or a company vehicle of some kind. So that is it. And I think regular consumer to come and actually, well, I'm going to try a bike because I'm getting it as part of my package or my deal, and it's part of my health and mental, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a definite, that is happening and going in that direction a lot now. And the subscription model, because people are so used to Netflix and, subscribing. I subscribe to a bike, I pay my monthly fee, it's got to get serviced, it's insured. And if I don't like it, I give it back. At the end of it, that's always the question, what do you do with it afterwards? So it could be sold on or it goes back into the pool. But at some point, that bike always has another life. So yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's also not just integrating with people's lives, it's integrating with everything else. So where you park it, at work, other transport solutions potentially as well.
Actually, I don't want to take up other people's time, but something I wanted to mention was infrastructure is obviously something that has to be developed more and more. Architecture, that's urban plan. Those are streets that have to be widened, and that takes a long time. We can create bicycles that confront those issues and are more robust on the road. So those are big things to be thinking about too. Like with fuel, for instance, electric motorcycles. How do we make a class 3 bicycle that is a good piece of transportation? Integrating a throttle into the experience gets you out in front of the vehicles, gives you buffer, right? And that in a sense is kind of like infrastructure, right? Safe streets give you buffer between cars. A throttle gives you buffer between the car behind you. So thinking about it in terms of that way too is a great thing. Yeah. And then integration of smart technologies. I can go on and on. So
I think that is Jordan. Yeah, I agree with Jordan. I think the next step is about connectivity, safety, and transforming the e-bike into something that is not an electric bike. It's a different vehicle on its own, with its ergonomics. So just to give you an example, one thing that was very important to us was that the fuel consumers are mostly middle-aged people that have ridden in the past, but are getting a very nice e-bike because they want to go back to cycling. They need a commute. They need to do things with their e-bike. But they haven't necessarily been on a carbon Tour de France bike for hours, or it's been a long time. So in that respect, one thing that was very important to us for our next generation was to have a simplicity of riding that was unparalleled. And when we came across the VILLIER R&D team that was developing this automatic gear shifting system for an e-bike with 7 gears, just like in an automatic car. You just get in the car, turn it on, get going, and forget about all the rest. Same for the e-bike. There's a lot of people, especially in the US, they're not trained of changing gears, right? nobody has a stick shift in the US. I mean, 0.1%. It's different in Europe. There's more convenience with gear, but in the US, no, it's not that. So having a bike where you have 12 gears and you got to shift this, shift that, no, it's not the culture. So one big evolution that we're introducing with the VILLIER motor is that it's an entirely automatic shifting. You don't have to think about it. So now you need balance and pedal. And even, as Jordan was saying, not even pedal that much because you got a throttle. Okay, so with a throttle, you can go up to 20 miles per hour. It's kind of a little moped. And so this electric, I think in the future, there'll be pedal bikes, there'll be electric bikes, and we should find another name for that because it's a category of its own. It's not a bike with a motor, it's something different. And then there'll be e-mopeds, and there'll be e-motorcycles, and there'll be e-cars, and there'll be e-buses, and other categories. But it's really evolving. And what is really interesting, as you guys were mentioning, is that the e-bike category is morphing into something different that is different from bicycling, that is different from a motorcycle, and that is very different from a car. And it's all these specificities about connectivity, safety, automatic shifting, and whatnot is really what is thrilling for the coming, let's say, five years.
Let's hop over to safety real quick, because that is a big concern both for riders and for e-bike makers, of course. Unless anybody, Yves or anybody else have anything to add to the last topic?
I just tried to catch up on what
yeah
said, so it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, but safety, we've as you know, there have been reports of fires from batteries, and this is not unique to e-bikes by any stretch, as we all know from issues we've seen with cell phones in the past, ubiquitous that were caught catching fire and so forth like that. But also safety in terms of rider safety. We're talking about riding bikes at speeds a fair bit faster than most people have ridden in the past. I think studies have shown most people, when they're just pedaling a bike, a regular analog bike, you're talking 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour. Now we've got class 2s, e-bikes that on throttle will go 20, and class 3s that will go 28, at least in the US. I know in Europe it's different, a little bit slower. But these are much higher velocities that people are used to riding, and you're kind of edging into almost scooter velocities. And so we've seen, some good advances. A lot of the bikes have fantastic brakes now. Anti-lock braking is just beginning to show up in e-bikes. And also I've noticed a trend with helmets. Helmets becoming more robust, and also helmets with a lot of tech in them, such as if you're involved in a crash, it will automatically notify someone, call somebody, or send a notification. What needs to happen in the industry to basically avoid a lot of oppressive regulation around things like batteries and so forth like that, and also safety? We already have the tier system 1, 2, and 3. What else can be done? Anybody can just...
Safety is a very active topic at FUELL, because in the sense of long range, fully automatic, car replacement vehicle, you got to integrate safety. And so the expectation on safety are pretty high, but the reality on a bike or a motorcycle are very different than from a car, right? So ABS is a good example. It's coming to e-bike, but ABS will be able to improve braking, but you won't be able to have an automated system, at least not now, that's gonna prevent you from colliding by braking for you, because it's a two-wheeler. And what happens if it comes to a halt, or you're not prepared for braking? In a car, you have a seat belt and everything. On a bike, you just fall. So there's this big issue of like what the safety systems are able to do. We're working with several partners to actually bring some active safety system for two-wheelers, where is going to be collision avoidance information, is going to be what's in your blind spot, what's behind you, what are the different risks associated with your travel. But I think it's going to take a few years before we have some real advancement in e-bike or e-motorcycle safety. And even then, it will still be considered more dangerous than a car because you're less protected intrinsically. And so we can reduce this, but I think also it's a change of mind, and it's a matter also of infrastructure and regulation so that people get protected a little bit against themselves, because there's no way we're going to be able to protect the rider the same way. That's unfortunate, but this is also the reality.
Yeah, I suppose until cities or governments put behind real safe, till it becomes a mass market in a sense where we've got segregated roads and cycle lanes in all cities, in all countries. Safety just like you said, and some of it is, I think what we could do, I suppose you have to do your best, like you said, you integrate a little bit of safety feature to the bike, peripheral vision, sensors telling you where you are, but have the best brakes you can, but it still comes down to pure common sense, at least for now, until things move on further. Of course, you can have better helmets, you can have better clothing potentially, to protect yourself. But I think there is an element of risk in that you'll always have.
Yeah, it's and also we should also distinguish between the consumer and the fleet.
Yeah.
The fleet issue is where I think safety is going to come first, because if you're UPS, for example, or Amazon, and you have a fleet of bike, the people that are driving those bikes or cargo are your employees, and you have a liability, and they have a liability of driving, during their work time. And we see some interesting progress, not only, on front and rear cameras and collision avoidance, but also in very precise geolocation to the meter, be able to see at any time where the person is. A speed fencing where if the bike is actually on a sidewalk, it is limited to 5 km/h. If it is in a zone that you cannot per hour, it's limited to 25 km/h. And I think this is a level also of safety and progress that is coming to e-bikes that's going to be really important. Now, do I want a system that tells me you're in a 25 km zone, you can't drive more than 25 km? Nah, probably not, because this is my choice. This is, I don't need a big brother to regulate me. But if I'm an employee of UPS, if it's a 25 km zone, it should be a 25 km zone, no question asked. So this is also a level of safety that is going to be implemented on fleet that I think is extremely positive, and it will have repercussion also onto the consumer market. Another example is when the helmet law is mandatory, you have a front-facing camera that can detect whether you're having a helmet or not, no helmet. So in the case of a fleet, there's no question you're supposed to have a helmet. You're an employee of the company. You have liability. For a consumer, it's just a little bit like cars. If you don't put your seatbelt on, it's gonna beep and make you completely crazy until you just put it on, right? So we could imagine that where the helmet law is mandatory, there should be a camera say, look, you're about to drive a 28 miles per hour class 3 e-bike. You have to have a helmet. You're not wearing one. What's going on? Put your helmet on. And then, there might be a way to bypass it, but at least have this level of warning that's going to be helping be safer. Not 100% safe, but safer is the word.
Yeah. And then, on the other side of things too, there's a few like low-hanging fruits to, I think, make your bicycles or riding experience safer. A few simple ones is this idea called biomotion. And what you do is you use your body to indicate to cars, you're a person, you're moving on a bike. That could be a simple example of biomotion is reflectors in the pedals, right? A light on the back of your helmet, on the end of your handlebars. So when you move, the natural body movements, are lighting up and reflecting. And so people notice that because it's an odd movement that they're seeing. So that's one thing to do. Another thing is, make sure your motors are UL tested and batteries are UL tested. It's more expensive. It's going to be a more expensive bike, but it won't catch fire and people won't die. That's another thing. And then a third is, I mentioned it earlier, integrations of throttle and also dropper posts. If you can create that confidence in the person so that they have a much more pleasant experience. So for instance, they come to a red light, and instead of having to worry about dismounting, maybe this individual has compromised balance. So they can drop their saddle and be foot on the ground and not have to dismount. And when you ride bikes like step-through bikes, which are inevitable, especially when we develop bikes that are more inclusively designed, they won't have top tubes, which means they flop easier. And what I mean by that is when you stand over a bike, that top tube kind of leans on your body. You no longer have that, so the bike can just fall over. You kind of want something to have your feet on the ground and then a throttle to speed you up. And you don't have to pedal and then swap the bike around. It's very much a cycling experience thing. And if you haven't experienced it, try riding a step through, going to a stop and then starting up again. You'll see exactly what I mean. And then integration of farther out technologies. That's computer vision and things like that. I just rode the rodeo system, for instance. And the rodeo system, and there's even other ones too, Doc-E, there's all these companies out there. I thought that the system would tell me, what's behind me, and then I would all of a sudden forget to look both ways. That wasn't the case. My spatial awareness still kicked in. The system told me what was behind me, and I had more certainty of my movements. But if I want to, I could still look. And if I want to be predictable to the car, I could still put my hand up. But the systems give you more peace of mind and create a much more pleasant experience. So it's really like if you can create peace of mind for that rider and they're more certain about their movements and they know exactly what they're doing, that makes it much safer. So like when you look at people that just hop on a bike, like bike life, kids doing wheelies down the street, kids hopping on scooters for the first time, that rider etiquette is low. Like there's no rider etiquette there. They're slipping in front of cars, and cars think scooter riders are assholes. No, that's just an asshole on a scooter, and they need better etiquette. So that's another thing too. And that comes down to the marketing message and the storytelling. There's so many factors that can go into really helping increase safety.
Yeah, consumer education.
Yeah.
Which is a very, very big topic and very hard to do for a brand, particularly. As an industry, maybe together we could do that, but as an individual brand, that's very difficult to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even anything from any input on your end?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I'm more in a sports bicycle, so it's hard to me to argue on commuter bikes where my colleagues are way better than me. But I have to say that just to speak about the safety and battery burns, as an example with COMMENCAL, we only use trusted brands like Shimano or Bosch, and we never had any issue on that. So I noticed a couple of problems when we use not known sources from other countries. So I don't know what's the point of view of my colleagues regarding that, but yeah, I'm definitely interested to know more about what you are doing with batteries.
Very good. Let's talk about how consumers influence your bike design and the choices that you make in designing bikes. And how do you interface with the consumers? Obviously, there's, tell us your opinion and so forth like that. But beyond that, what do you as company representatives, how do you talk to consumers and get ideas about what they want in their e-bikes?
I suppose I'll touch on that a little bit, which kind of feeds into pre-launch. One of our kind of co-hosts is, how do you do product validation and how do you test the market for a product, in a sense where, you know, you've got different platforms where you can launch your products. Indiegogo, for example, as one, and I think some companies tend to use it to actually launch from scratch. Some people use it as a test bed, in a sense where, when you interact with those consumers, they ask all the kinds of questions that you think you can then answer. But I think by understanding all the questions they ask, you answer the customer needs. And there's all that feedback gives you direction towards your design. And also, if you do eventually launch the product, it gives you a whole lot of insight as to how to prepare or how to sell or market that product as well. But, you know, like I said, you know, for product validation is a science on one hand, but the way, from my experience, what Honbike has done, we've created a product, we've tested it in small little batches with different countries, maybe where we won't go into, and it's been relatively successful. Make a few changes, then you did the Indiegogo campaign, learned a lot more. But then, you know, what you find is that each market is actually quite different. Like, you know, the average rider height, for example, and rider weight, conditions, stretch, feel, and it becomes quite a science where, in a sense, a German consumer and a Dutch consumer have a different need for, or they used to have, the rear racks used to be different. Some were spring loaded and some were elastic, and it's all those tiny little things that make a difference. And in this day and age with the e-bike, people are using it as an umbrella, I suppose. But you need to make your bike unique, of course, to stand out a little bit, but you also have to make it practical for the market you're trying to sell it in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and especially that's why we created pre-launch, to be honest, because we see that not only consumers are different in different countries, but also we have been speaking about some of the challenges where we bring non-cyclists to the industry. So there are like new types of consumer segments that companies are not that much familiar with, and we see when we're speaking with the companies, we see this need of eliminating or mitigating the guesswork as much as possible, and direct communication with the customers as much as possible, because we see too much reliance on the distributors and retailers, and getting the feedback only from these kind of channels make it work the brands in kind of isolation in a little bit, and not validating with the customers make it really expensive. As you know, in the e-bikes, like if you go into the market and then change it with your second models, etc., you're making very costly mistakes. So that's why we created pre-launch, which is very different from crowdfunding platforms, because they were specifically designed for fundraising, and it's basically you need to have a pretty ready-made products already for going into the crowdfunding platforms. So we wanted to get a step earlier, a step before that, to facilitate this direct communication with the real customers, make data-driven decisions, and basically we understand that all these mistakes are really very costly. So you need to kind of really prove that you're moving confidently on the right direction. So, yeah.
I think you mentioned something there, just made me think of, you know, we're going from a very mechanical industry traditionally to something completely new and electronic in a way, combining both. And not just that, but the user, the customer, the consumer, everything has changed. So what we used to use as a benchmark in the cycle industry is maybe, and we're still on some hand, we're still relying on those same benchmarking systems, just with an electric motor and battery put on there. But actually it needs to change completely. Yeah, some of us learn the hard way because it becomes very expensive. And some of us have, you know, just got lucky because we use our gut feel. But there, you know, most people, you know, it's very easy to get it wrong.
Yeah.
Because you tend to fall in love with your own product.
Yeah, that's always a risk if you leave it either to the designers or to the engineers. You know, they will design or engineer the perfect product, and nobody wants to buy it. I think, and I saw this question from Amelia in the chat of like, you know, since the market has a lot of established companies, how do smaller businesses or new companies enter the e-bike market? I think we have to bring a difference. And if I talk about our example, we had famous motorcycle engineer design an e-bike. So that was a different angle. And the other angle was, the traditional angle was that the e-bikes were a continuation of a pedal bike on which you had slapped a motor and a battery. And truth of the matter, this is not how it works. And I'm sure Jordan doesn't take, you know, a Trek bike and turn it into a Trek e-bike by just putting a motor and a battery. It's a completely different design, balance of everything. So the way Tesla has entered, the way Tesla has entered the car market is the same way Fuel and other new companies try to enter the e-bike market, of you know, taking a different perspective on the product itself, the way it is thought, it is designed, it is engineered, and it is produced. And there is a level of risk in the sense that, as Bill was mentioning, we don't just ask out there, is like, hey guys, what do you want, you know, as for wheels or tires? What do you want for this and that? No, we gotta make educated choices. And the innovation we're bringing is a little bit like the iPad back in the day. Nobody had thought about the iPad, and most of the people who looked at the iPad had said, well, I already have an iPhone and I already have a MacBook, so what is that thing? And that thing, you know, turned out to be something that has its own place in the ecosystem of mobile and digital tools. So for the e-bike, it's the same. The e-bike is a class in itself. There's a number of innovations that don't make any sense. I remember some crowdfunding for some bike with no hubs and, you know, hollow wheels. That thing couldn't work. You know, I've seen also this made-to-order carbon printed frame for $300. Guess what? The company gone bust. So there are these ideas that, you know, don't really make sense. But there's also this set of ideas where, oh, we're going to give you an automatic transmission. We're going to give you 300 miles of range. We're going to give you, you know, ergonomics and comfort. We're going to give you safety system that you don't need to pay McKinsey $1 billion just to know it's a good idea. And so there's the role of the community, of course, and of market studies, but there's also the role of having people that are, you know, their head correctly set onto their shoulders and say, all right, what's the market? What can we make as a difference? And this is the way that, to answer Amelia, new e-bike companies and new e-motorcycle companies like Fuel can actually exist in a crowded market.
And that was a question that was on our agenda, is how do smaller startups fit in and how can they stand out in what has become a very crowded and very, at least for now, popular marketplace. So I appreciate the answer, Francois. We do want to set aside a little bit of time here at the end. We've got about 12 minutes left, and we are seeing some questions come up on chat, and I wanted to pop those in if they were relevant. One of them is, do you see e-bike brands developing their own line of accessories? Jordan touched on this earlier, and things like, you know, lighting systems and so forth like that. And is your company, your bicycle company, working on them? And are there, you know, what does that mean for the aftermarket as well? It certainly seems like an opportunity there for some new products, and we're seeing lots of new products in the aftermarket as well. But do you plan on introducing accessories basically matched to your product?
Yeah, well, so when you think about the idea of integration, you know, it's a part that fits flush to another part. So yes, definitely. That could come down to a proprietary lamp. It can come down to a proprietary HMI, which is like a screen that you look at on your cockpit. It can come down to saddles, fenders, racks, all this stuff. The idea here is that, you know, we want to create a very definable, holistic product that then also has an ecosystem behind it. So when you think of like on the consumer level and also the mechanics level, you know, how can these bikes be maintained and operated? How can a consumer feel the empowerment to go and fix something on their own that might be easy enough for them to do? So yeah, definitely. There are aftermarket products being developed. When you think of a brand like Trek, though, it's more of an integrated product, and then there's an aftermarket industry, right? And the bikes for that will still exist. There's always going to be the tinkerer's bike. There's always going to be the person that wants to customize their bike. There's always going to be boutique brands and brands that are willing to design for that industry because it thrives. There's always a want for that. But yeah, when you look at bigger brands like Trek or even startups like FUELL, for instance, like that's a very integrated approach. And all the parts on the bike fit together to create a big picture. So yeah,
I agree with you, Jordan, but I have mixed feelings. The mixed feelings come from the aftermarket that is extremely lively and full of innovative companies that provide a lot of great accessories. So are we going to join that pool and try to do our own, or just slap our name on existing products? So here's what we think is it has to be really dedicated integrated products. Then it's really interesting. But for example, we don't offer standard seat post suspension on our e-bikes. And everybody's like, oh, where's the seat post suspension? It's just you go to Amazon. You got anything from $10 to $2,000, and you just pick the one that you like best. It's a standard part, and so we're making no difference. Same for phone holders. All right, our team says, hey, everybody would like to have a phone holder. I'm not going to buy 10,000 phone holders in Vietnam, at $1 just to ship it and have it, on some logistical center and to make $2 on each phone holder. There's companies that does much better than that. And phone holders is just like the seat post or the the color of your helmet. Everybody's got a different opinion. So guess what? Just choose something else. Now, integrating luggage, for example, that is very specific. The shape, the size, the attachment of the luggage, that makes sense. So at FUELL, what we're going to do is limit ourselves at things that are very specific to our e-bikes. Everything else, Amazon.com. Perfect. You'll find everything.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, Francois.
Yeah, hands up to that one.
I wanted to just add that, of course, it's up to the brands and also the economics and then the brand positioning kind of plays a lot of role in here. But one insight that we had is that when you're engaging the customers at an early stage, you have a really high brand affinity. So they really, there's really a big demand on that side, right? So they really want all kinds of products with your brand on it. So there will be a big brand, and then on the brand side, you will see which one kind of matches with your positioning and strategies.
Yeah, I smile as you say that, because it's very sometimes, like Francois says, we don't want to deal with things that you can buy anywhere, like even grips or saddle or things like that. But you do get your customers who bought your branded product, but they want your branded saddle replacement, they want your branded grip, and sometimes they get disappointed by it. But it's just for the brand, it's just another SKU, which it doesn't really make sense for us to carry or to sell. And I mean, in some cases, a lot of it is put up there for spare parts and people can buy them, but it's not really essential to the core of the actual brand itself. We've got to make a great product, easy to use, and then the essential integrated accessories that go with that for your particular bike or your ecosystem, your rear carrier, or as an example. But but I get that side. Some consumers just, I want that brand, I want that exact same branded tire on my bike. I don't want another one. I want yours because that's what my bike came with. And I think that sometimes when it comes out the factory, it has it on there, but we don't actually supply it later on, I suppose.
Yeah, picking and choosing those specific components that you do integrate is important. Like for commuting, it's like the car market in the sense that people wear that as a piece of fashion. They represent themselves with it, and they might not be a cyclist. But when you go to the mountain bike side of things, for example, that customer likes to put new handlebars on their bike. And so how is that integration working, right? Are they actually, fuse in a way? Are they actually meeting flush? Or is it more of a modular approach to design? And so thinking in terms of like, what is that market? What is that shared value graphic? because different demographics all share values. And so how do you make that product more inclusive to a wider audience? By picking and choosing what, you integrate. So that way that customer really feels like they can own it.
But Jordan, just in case, you work for Trek, but I guess if you're developing products, it will be under Bontrager.
Yeah,
Okay.
Bontrager, yeah.
So
Yep.
this is why to me it's also important, because you're part of a big company, and that is a point where you had a great point, is because you also developed your own brand for components, and obviously there is people that doesn't want to use specialized bike components on a Trek bicycle because it's specialized. But with you have Trek and Bontrager, so there is no problem to fit Bontrager components on another bicycle brand. So I guess it's two different topics here.
Yeah, and some of that blends together too. Like some products are developed specifically for the bike. Yeah, and then there's some products like a lamp, for instance, that's a Bontrager product, right?
Yeah.
But a shroud for that lamp that's designed for that specific model that maybe is shared, that's a Trek product. Yeah.
It's there's a lot of input from a lot of different places, definitely for parts and accessories, and it's an interesting situation for everybody. Last question. We're just running out of time here. We're at 57 minutes, so we just got a few minutes left. What's next from your company? What are you looking forward to in the future? Obviously, you can't talk about future products specifically, probably, but what do you have your eye on?
Well, I'll start with fuel. Pretty obvious. We have the Fuel Flow, which is an e-motorcycle. It's been advertised. It got some very interesting crowdfunding response, and we're full on in building this next gen e-motorcycle. I think now is the time after e-bikes for e-motorcycles to actually take a little bit of the limelight.
Yves, what about on your from COMMENCAL?
Well, we try to develop again, because we are on the competition side. We try to have lighter bikes to fit people with a more cross-country background.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quinton?
I think not to give too much away, I suppose, but I think our company as a whole is looking a lot at modularity in a sense of being able to service and repair bikes, design bikes that look good, and obviously, but also have the ability to have a modular aspect to it, so that it can be repaired quite simply and easily, not just by a specialist bike shop, but potentially by your consumer at home, in a sense, depending on the complexity of it. I think that's the kind of direction we're heading in.
Thank you. I got about 30 seconds, Jordan.
Yeah. So for Trek, I think there's 2 degrees. The city category is huge, and even we have mountain and road. It's really about developing bikes that are much more sustainable, in the sense that we have parts that are designed to be shared, and bikes that can then be, have a longer lifespan and be passed down. And in that sense, also thinking of bikes that are can give somebody the ability to buy a Trek at a lower price point, but then still have that premium product that has that trickle down, that traditional trickle down, while creating that integration and being able to share parts between those, so that someone can get a premium piece of that experience, but still have something that's very value based, but at a more attractive price point than maybe someone who doesn't want to drop $6,000 on a bike.
Sounds great. I just want to thank everybody for participating today. It's been a very good learning experience. I want to thank everybody who tuned in to ask questions and listen. This will be available online, and we hope to have another roundtable here in the future with more participation from perhaps some other vendors as well. Thank you all very much for joining us today. Good luck with all your projects, and we'll see you again in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.